Welcome, Marianne. Thanks for being here at the Analytics Summit 2023. It was great to have you, to see you talk, and really enjoyed your talk today. So maybe you'd like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me too. It's been a really fun event so far. So my name is Marianne, and I have worked within CRO for the previous 10 years, basically. I've been employed and for working as a consultant and so, but now I work for my own independent firm, which was only me, and it's called the Queen of CRO.
Can you maybe quickly just do a short recap of your keynote today?
Absolutely. So my keynote was more around CRO and how we work with data and analytics within CRO. When we work with data in connection to CRO, it's not only the analysis parts we do with the tests, it's also how the data flows within the entire CRO program. So basically I talked about like the 5 biggest data fails that we do in our CRO programs.
Right at the beginning, you showed a statistic that said that really a lot of, or not many companies are acting on data actually, so only 10%. So out of your experience, why is that the case actually?
I think it's really, really hard to actually act on data. So if we see the 3 steps that we have the gathering data part, the creating the insights, and then taking action. I think the hardest step of all of those 3 is actually creating insights. Because you can have one data point. When you have that, that's a fact. It's an information point. You kind of have to set that data point into context of other data points to create insights and be able to do that. And that's really hard. You need different types of data sources. It's hard to work with a bunch of aggregated data, which we basically have in Google Analytics to create those insights. So I think that's where very many organizations are limited. And when you have actually done that, you need also to have the team and capabilities to take action of it. So each and every one of those steps are easier said than done.
Within the 5 most common data fails you showed, you were also talking about hypothesis and how important it is to include everything important to your hypothesis up front. Is there anything you would recommend, any tips on not forgetting things when putting up a hypothesis?
Yeah, absolutely. So I talked a lot about like primary and secondary goals. Like usually in a hypothesis, there is room and space for one main metric that you should follow up on, which is very closely tied together with the change you're executing, right? But you're also allowed to put in secondary goals in your hypothesis to even more strengthen the hypothesis in itself and make sure that we are changing the behavior of our users in correct ways. So in those secondary goals, I would say, like keep your business KPIs, like revenue, sales, your end conversion rate, everything like that. Keep that always as secondary goals. That will kind of create a space for you to play around with your primary goal as an actual behavioral change, more than if you only, I think we get stuck because it's called CRO, like optimize your conversion rate, and then everyone just puts the conversion rates as their primary KPI all the time. Which doesn't really lead you anywhere because it's so hard to change that. But if we focus on changing and increasing the micro KPIs, the drivers of the conversion rate in our pages, we will, as a secondary metric, in the end, actually optimize for our overall conversion rate as well. But we don't have to focus blindly on that spot. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I think that's a very good one. So out of your practical experience over all of those years, would you say that there's kind of a maximum number of goals to use? Because I know from our experience at TRKKN, there are a lot of clients that use, I don't know, tons of goals to measure their experiments and then somehow get lost within or looking into the data, pointing into different directions in the end.
Yeah, I think it's a really valid question. I would say that most organizations have the opposite problem. They might not be looking at enough data. They might be executing one test and then they're like, okay, this happened and this happened, and then here are our business goals. And it's like, but do you really understand what happened? Where is the flow? How many, can we do a funnel, for example? But funnels are also a really good, interesting format to keep your KPIs like in, to keep it simple and to keep it in like almost a framework for your tests. Okay, so we're always looking at this type of funnel, so we can actually see, did our drop-off rate change during that funnel? So you can have some set KPIs and then focus on one primary one for the test, or maybe two.
Makes sense. So looking at test results, and you also touched the topic of sample size a little bit and what to look at. So you basically broke it down to 3 points, which were the 95% significance, the 500 conversions per variation, right? And also the 80% power. So knowing from a lot of client discussions, is there anything you would recommend to smaller companies that do not reach those numbers to be statistically significant in their results that they can do instead of this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a valid question, because if you see that and if you should work with CRO properly, this is where you need to be. If you cannot reach those numbers yet, I would say congratulations are in order, because actually you have something that bigger companies don't have, and that is you have the room and the space to actually look at qualitative data. You're in the place where you can ask your customers or users and actually have time to go through those results, watch recordings, you know, that kind of qualitative data that you can use and take that as information and say, I'm going to take action on this. We're going to do releases and we can follow up on that data to see that it goes in the right direction. So maybe you're not in the space where you execute A/B tests, but that's just a part of working data-driven, right? So big companies don't even have the availability to look at large-scale qualitative data. It just needs to get aggregated at another scale because it's too much of it.
You already said something about the context of A/B tests, right? So looking at the results, setting up the A/B tests in context to the page around. Can you specify that a little bit?
Absolutely. So basically working with CRO is like really easy if you had one goal. Because I can make everyone click on one button. I'll just make it really, really big and put it there on top of the page so you don't see anything else, right? But that wouldn't work, because then everything else would like disappear, and that's not really all we want the users to do. So basically that is me exaggerating it, so you would understand like, yeah, of course, we need to take the context into consideration. But when we, for example, then make an A/B test, let's say, in the navigation and change the copy in the navigation, if we only stare blindly at that click-through rate, then we're forgetting the rest of the page. We might as well have done a huge button on the entire page because we don't care about the context around it. So I think that's the way you could kind of form an image and to understand what context actually means within CRO.
So overall, looking at this 5 common data fails, what would you say with regards to the current year, for example, 2023? What would you say, how's the progress within companies of when it comes to realize those data fails and solving it in the end? Where would you say we are standing now?
So I would say maturity within these data fails are actually quite low overall. That's why they are common data fails. But the good thing about them is that they are quite simple to overcome. They're not really complicated. It's mostly ways of working, and it's mostly building a framework to make sure that we're not looking at data this way. And kind of if you've done it once and seen it, then you understand like, oh, okay, we don't want to do this. To move over to a better ways of working is not that difficult. You just have to be aware of that you're doing it. That's also why I wanted to talk about it today, to create that awareness. Since it's very kind of easy and maybe easy mistakes to do, I don't think a lot of companies talk openly about it because, oh, we are at a bigger maturity level than that. But everyone does these mistakes. Every company I ever worked with have done these mistakes. So it's okay to talk about it, and I think if it's okay to talk about it, then we can very easily fix it. So I think this is kind of a big problem in taking CRO to the next level for many organizations, since it's in the basics almost. But when you do that, the next journey after that will come very easily. And I would say the maturity overall for CRO is larger than these problems are.
So let's maybe at the end of the interview take a step back, as I know that you are also kind of into the topic of AI a little bit with regards to CRO and to optimization. So what do you say, how can AI, which is, I mean, pretty famous right now out there, right, as a topic, how can AI or could this help in the future with regards to conversion rate optimization?
I would say that we need to see where AI can actually help us. And for me, when you're looking at the whole CRO program, where we put a lot of time and like human effort, is a lot by deciding where should we do the tests and like who should see maybe different personalizations and stuff like that. That's a lot of a guessing game, at least in the beginning. If you haven't done that many tests, if you've done a lot of tests and can create like a meta-analysis of those tests, then you can understand that. But most companies don't have that, and it takes years to get that there. There an AI can help us to understand where do you have the biggest chance and possibility of a positive impact on your outcome of your test. What does that segment look like, and where on the site should you create that change? So to get that, I think that will make a huge impact on CRO in the future.
Yeah, super interesting. Super interesting to see what's to come there. So final question, having you here for the first time at the Analytics Summit, which is great, what is your experience so far? Did you like the conference?
Yeah, I loved it. It's very like enthusiastic with all of the people visiting, of course, and all of the speakers are also really great. Everyone's been really nice, and the information and like the level on how people talk to each other, it's very energizing. Yeah, so it's been really fun.
Cool. So thanks a lot for the interview. Thanks for being here, Marianne, and hope to see you soon in the future.
Thank you.